My community killed one random person a month to keep the population stable. I was 12 when my best friend's mother was chosen. Her name echoed across the square and everyone stepped away from her like she had a disease. She looked at my friend and started crying. "I love you," she said. "I love you so much." The guards dragged her to the center of the square where they made us all pick up stones, heavy ones that hurt to hold. Her family had to throw first because that was the rule. My friend's stone barely left her hand before dropping to the ground, so the guards made her throw again harder. It hit her mother's shoulder and her mother screamed, which was when everyone else started throwing. The sound was the worst part. Stones hitting meat and breaking things inside while her voice got weaker with each hit until it stopped completely. When it was over, they left her body there until sunset, and we had to walk past it to get home. My friend held my hand so tight I lost feeling in my fingers. That night, I couldn't stop shaking. "What if they call our name next?" I asked my mother. "Then we die," she said. "But what if—" She slapped me hard across the face. "Stop it. Everyone will hear you." The fear never left after that. Every month when the lottery approached, I'd throw up from anxiety and have nightmares about my name being called, about stones flying at me, about my parents having to throw first. The morning of each lottery, I'd beg to stay home sick, but attendance was mandatory, and missing meant automatic selection. When I was 14, they called my neighbor's name. She tried to run, but the guards caught her at the edge of the square and dragged her back screaming, "Please! My daughter needs me. She's only 3. They tied her hands anyway and made us pick up our stones. Her husband had to throw first, and his stone hit her stomach, making her double over gasping. Their little girl was crying so hard someone had to hold her up while blood ran down the woman's face into her mouth. She spat it out and screamed for her daughter, and it took so long for her to die. So many stones. I threw mine when the guards watched but aimed for the ground. My older brother fell in love that year with a girl who was beautiful and smart and kind. They'd hold hands when they thought no one was watching. The day he was going to propose, her name got called, and my brother dropped to his knees. She walked to him and kissed him goodbye in front of everyone. "It's okay," she whispered. "I love you." But it wasn't okay because he had to throw the first stone as her boyfriend. It hit her leg and she fell, and the sound she made broke something in him. I saw it happen as he threw stone after stone after stone even after she stopped moving, until the guards had to pull him away. He never spoke again after that, just stopped talking completely. He'd sit at dinner moving his mouth like he was trying to say something, but no sound came out. Mom would cry watching him. "Please," she'd beg. "Please, say something." But he couldn't or wouldn't, and the silence was worse than screaming. When I turned 16, I started noticing things that didn't make sense. The council members who ran the lottery never got chosen, and neither did their children or grandchildren. 5 families who'd been here since the beginning, and never once had I seen them throw first. Never once had they stood in the center bleeding. "Why don't they ever get picked?" I whispered to my mother one night. Her face went white. "Don't. But you've noticed too. Stop talking right now." The next lottery, I watched the council leader pull a name from the box. His hand went deep inside, feeling around and choosing, not random at all. He pulled out a paper and read a farmer's name. The farmer walked forward on shaking legs while his wife screamed and his children sobbed, and the council families stood in their special section watching like it was entertainment. 3 months later, they called my father. Mom collapsed completely, falling to the ground like her bones had dissolved. Father pulled her up roughly. "Stand," he ordered. "Our children are watching." He walked to the center with his back straight and looked at us one more time. Mom had to throw first, but her stone went wide on purpose, so the guards made her throw again. It hit his chest and he grunted. Then my brother threw, then me. The stone burned my hand, heavy and sharp, and I threw it as soft as I could, but it still hit him. My own father. Blood ran from his temple as more stones flew. So many stones until he wasn't my father anymore. Just a shape on the ground. After that, Mom stopped eating. She got thinner and thinner until her clothes hung off her like sheets. "I want to be light," she said. "So when they choose me, the stones will kill me faster." She made us practice our throws in the backyard and made us promise to aim for her head. "Make it quick," she said. The morning of the next lottery, I woke up certain it would be me. At the square, I stood between my mother and brother while the council leader reached into the box. His hand moved around inside, selecting and choosing. He pulled out a paper and my name rang across the square. My legs gave out completely and the guards had to carry me while I screamed. They tied my hands and turned me to face the crowd where my mother stood in the front row holding a stone, my brother beside her, and behind them 300 people who would kill me rock by rock. The guards grab my arms and twist them behind my back, rope burning my wrists as they tie the knots so tight my fingers start going numb. They drag me to the center of the square and turn me around to face everyone, my legs shaking so bad they can't hold me up anymore. 2 guards stand on either side gripping my arms to keep me standing, and I can see every single face in the crowd. My mother stands in the front row crying with a stone in her hands that looks way too heavy for her to lift. My brother stands next to her holding his own stone, his face completely empty like nobody's home behind his eyes. The crowd behind them stretches back 300 people deep, all of them holding stones, all of them waiting to throw. My mother raises her stone with both hands, shaking so hard I can see it from here, tears running down her face and dripping off her chin. The guards tighten their grip on my arms, and I'm screaming for her not to do it, begging her to stop, but she pulls her arm back. The stone leaves my mother's hand and hits my shoulder, and pain explodes through my whole body, making me cry out. The guards force me to stay standing even though my knees want to give out, their fingers digging into my arms hard enough to bruise. The crowd bends down to pick up their stones, and I watch my brother lift his with movements that look robotic, his face still blank like he's not even really here. I suddenly understand this is how he survived throwing stones at the girl he loved, by going somewhere else in his head and letting his body do the terrible thing without him. More people raise their stones, and I'm crying and shaking, the pain in my shoulder spreading hot and sharp down my whole arm. My mother picks up another stone with her hands still shaking, her face twisted up ugly from crying, and she throws again. This one hits my ribs, and I hear something crack inside me, a sound like a stick breaking. The pain is so bad I can't breathe right, gasping for air that won't come all the way into my lungs. More stones start flying from the crowd and hitting my arms, my legs, my back. Each one feels like getting hit with a hammer, bruises blooming instant and hot under my skin. I'm screaming for them to stop, begging my mother to help me, looking right at her while stones keep hitting me. But she just stands there crying and throwing stone after stone like the guards made her do when my father died 3 months ago. My brother throws his stone and it hits my leg. Then he picks up another one with those same mechanical movements. Blood runs down my arm from where a stone tore the skin open, warm and sticky. Another stone hits my stomach, and I double over as much as the guards will let me, throwing up on the ground. The crowd keeps throwing, stone after stone after stone, and I can't tell anymore which hits are from my family and which are from everyone else. My vision starts going fuzzy around the edges from the pain, everything getting darker. A stone hits the side of my head hard, and everything goes blurry, my ears ringing loud enough to drown out the crowd noise. Blood runs into my eyes so I can barely see anymore, just shapes moving in front of me. I taste blood in my mouth, copper and salt mixing with the throw-up taste. My legs finally give out completely, but the guards hold me up by my arms, my whole body just hanging there while stones keep hitting. I'm about to pass out, the world tilting sideways and my brain going fuzzy, when suddenly someone yells something that sounds like now. Smoke bombs explode across the square, thick gray smoke filling the air so fast I can't see anything at all. People start coughing and yelling, stumbling around confused. The guards holding me let go, and I fall to my knees on the hard ground, more pain shooting through my already broken ribs. Hands grab me from behind, and I feel a knife sawing through the ropes on my wrists. The rope falls away and my arms drop, shoulders screaming from being held back so long. Someone throws me over their shoulder like a bag of flour and starts running before I can even process what's happening. I'm bouncing against their back with every step, my ribs grinding together and making me want to scream. The guards are yelling somewhere behind us, and the crowd is panicking in the smoke, people running into each other and coughing. Gunshots crack through the air, loud pops that make my ears ring worse. My rescuer doesn't slow down at all, just keeps running while I hang over their shoulder too hurt and confused to fight or help. More gunshots and someone screams, but we're moving away from it all, the smoke getting thinner as we go. I can feel my rescuers breathing, hard and fast against my stomach where I'm draped over them. Blood from my head wound drips down onto their back, leaving a trail. We run through narrow alleys between buildings, my rescuers' boots hitting the ground hard with each step. They're breathing really hard now, but never slowing down even though I must weigh a lot. The smoke and chaos fade behind us as we get farther from the square, the yelling and gunshots getting quieter. We reach the edge of the community where the buildings look old and falling apart, places I've never been allowed to go. The council always said these buildings were unsafe and might collapse, that we had to stay away from this whole section. But my rescuer runs right into this forbidden area without hesitating, taking turns through alleys like they know exactly where they're going. The buildings here have broken windows and doors hanging off hinges, some with roofs caved in. Weeds grow up through cracks in the road and everything looks abandoned. I try to lift my head to see where we're going, but the movement makes my vision swim and my stomach lurch. My rescuer carries me into a big warehouse with rusted metal walls and a roof full of holes. They don't stop at the main floor, instead heading straight for a door in the back corner. We go downstairs into a basement I didn't know existed, the air getting cooler and damper as we descend. At the bottom, there's a large room lit by battery-powered lanterns, and 6 other people wait there with boxes of medical supplies and weapons laid out on tables. A woman with short dark hair steps forward, and my rescuer carefully transfers me from their shoulder to her arms. She lays me down on a makeshift bed, really just blankets over a thin mattress on the floor. My whole body is screaming with pain, every movement making something hurt worse. The woman starts checking my injuries right away, her hands gentle but firm as she looks at my head wound. I'm trying to process that I'm somehow still alive, that these people saved me from the execution, that I'm not dead in the square with stones piled on top of me. The woman with dark hair looks into my eyes and introduces herself as Audrey. She explains in a calm voice that they're part of a resistance movement that's been operating in secret for 2 years. They've been watching the lottery and waiting for the right moment to act, she says. She tells me they chose to save me because I'm young enough to recover, but old enough to fight back. She also says my father's execution 3 months ago was so obviously manipulated that it proved the council's corruption to anyone paying attention. Her voice is steady and sure, like she's thought about this a lot. She explains they've been documenting the lottery patterns and building evidence, waiting for a rescue opportunity that would expose the system. Saving someone mid-execution and having them survive to tell about it is powerful proof that the lottery isn't sacred or necessary. I'm having trouble focusing on her words because my head is pounding and my ribs feel like they're stabbing into my lungs with every breath. I manage to ask about my mother and brother through split lips that hurt to move. Are they in danger now because of my rescue? Audrey's face goes serious and grim. She explains the council will definitely punish my family as an example to stop other people from trying to help resistance members. They'll probably select one of them for next month's lottery, she says. But bringing them here now would lead the guards straight to this hideout and get everyone killed. She says it quiet and gentle but honest, not trying to make it sound better than it is. The resistance has 15 members total, and this basement is their main base, so protecting this location matters more than individual rescues right now. I feel sick hearing that my family is in danger because these people saved me, but I also understand the logic. If the guards find this place, everyone here dies and the resistance ends. Audrey puts her hand on my arm carefully, avoiding the bruises, and tells me they're working on a plan to protect my family, but it'll take time. A younger woman with light brown hair comes over with clean cloths and bandages. She introduces herself as Liz and starts cleaning my wounds, wiping blood off my face with gentle touches. She explains she was training to be a nurse before her sister got selected 2 years ago, so she knows how to treat injuries. The pain is incredible as she cleans the cut on my head, worse than when the stone first hit. I force myself to stay quiet, though, biting my lip hard enough to taste more blood. Liz wraps my ribs tight with long strips of cloth, each wrap making it a little easier to breathe even though it hurts like crazy. She tells me I probably have 2 or 3 cracked ribs, but they should heal okay if I don't move around too much. I watch the other resistance members moving around the basement with smooth, efficient movements like they've done this before. They're checking weapons, organizing supplies, talking in low voices about something I can't hear. One man is cleaning the smoke bomb equipment in the corner. A woman is writing notes in a journal. Everyone moves with purpose, no wasted motion. Liz finishes wrapping my ribs and moves to checking my arms and legs for breaks, her hands pressing carefully on bones to see if anything shifts wrong. The whole time I'm thinking about my mother and brother back in the square, wondering if they think I'm dead, wondering what the council will do to them. Over the next few hours, resistance members come over one by one to introduce themselves and share their stories. A man named Wyatt tells me his wife was selected 2 years ago, right after she spoke against the council at a community meeting. A younger woman explains her brother got chosen 3 months after their family refused to sell their farm to a council member. Everyone here lost someone to the lottery, and everyone noticed the same patterns I did about council families never getting selected. Audrey sits with me while people talk and eventually tells me about her own parents. Her mother questioned a council decision at a meeting 5 years ago and got selected the next month. Her father spoke up about the suspicious timing and got chosen 6 months later. Audrey was 17 when it happened, and she's been building this resistance ever since, collecting evidence and waiting for the right moment to act. She pulls me up carefully, supporting my weight because my ribs still hurt badly, and walks me across the basement to a wall covered in papers. Names and dates fill every inch of space. Lines connecting families to council members, notes about property and disputes and public disagreements. I read through the names and recognized most of them, people I watched die in the square over the years. Every single person either opposed the council somehow, or owned something the council wanted, or belonged to families that threatened council power. The pattern is so clear now that I see it laid out like this. So obvious that I feel stupid for not putting it together sooner. Audrey points to specific clusters of names showing how the lottery targeted entire families sometimes, wiping out anyone who might continue resistance. She shows me documents they stole from council offices proving property transfers right after executions, proving the lottery was never about population control at all. A girl about my age comes over carrying a plate with bread and a cup of water. She introduces herself as Kaylee, Audrey's younger sister, and sets the food down beside me. I try to eat, but my stomach feels twisted and wrong, though I force down a few bites because Liz said I need to keep my strength up. Kaylee sits cross-legged on the floor and starts explaining how the resistance works, how they've spent 2 years documenting everything and trying to figure out how to expose the truth without getting everyone killed. She talks about execution patterns and council corruption in this calm, matter-of-fact way, like she's discussing weather or schoolwork. She's only 14, but she sounds ancient. Her childhood stolen by this system the same way mine was. She tells me about watching people die every month since she was 9, about learning to spot the patterns and who got selected, about realizing her parents were murdered for speaking up. Her hands stay steady while she talks, and her voice never shakes, and I realize she's had 5 years to process what I'm just starting to understand. The resistance has files on every execution for the past 12 years, witness statements from people who saw council members celebrating after certain selections, financial records showing how council families got richer while everyone else struggled. Kaylee explains they needed someone who'd actually been selected to confirm how the lottery box works, someone who stood close enough to see Fisher manipulate it. That night, I lie on the makeshift bed Liz set up for me in a corner of the basement, my body exhausted but my brain refusing to shut off. Every time I close my eyes, I see my mother's face as she raised that first stone, the way her whole body shook, the tears streaming down her cheeks. I see the stone leaving her hand and feel it hitting my shoulder again, the explosion of pain that made me scream. I see my brother's blank expression as he threw his stone with mechanical precision, the same dead look he's had since his girlfriend died. Sleep won't come no matter how tired I am, and eventually I just lie there staring at the ceiling while other resistance members move quietly around the basement. Liz notices me still awake and comes over with a blanket, sitting down beside the bed without saying anything at first. She tells me she has nightmares too, that everyone here does, that you learn to function even when your brain keeps replaying the worst moments over and over. She says some nights she still wakes up screaming about her sister's execution, still sees the stones hitting and hears the sounds, but eventually you find ways to keep going anyway. Her honesty helps somehow, knowing I'm not alone in this, knowing the nightmares are normal and expected. She stays with me until I finally drift off sometime near dawn, and even then my sleep is filled with images of the square and stones and blood. The next morning, Audrey gathers everyone in the center of the basement and starts explaining their plan. She has a wooden box that looks exactly like the lottery box Fisher uses, and she opens it to show the false bottom and weighted papers inside. The mechanism is complicated, with specific papers marked so Fisher can feel which ones to avoid when he reaches in. Audrey explains they've been studying the system for months, watching how Fisher operates it, trying to figure out exactly how the manipulation works. They needed someone who'd actually been selected and stood close enough to see everything, someone who could confirm their theories about the mechanical system. She looks at me and asks me to describe exactly what I saw before the smoke bombs went off, every detail I can remember about how Fisher's hand moved in the box. I close my eyes and force myself back to that moment, standing in the center of the square with my hands tied, watching Fisher reach into the box. I describe how his hand went deep inside, how his fingers moved around feeling the papers, how he seemed to be choosing rather than drawing randomly. I tell them about the way he paused before pulling out the paper with my name, like he was making sure he had the right one. Wyatt listens carefully and nods when I finish, his expression grim. He's a former engineer who lost his wife to the lottery, and he tells me that confirms the mechanical manipulation system he suspected. He explains the weighted papers and false bottom in technical terms I barely understand, but the basic idea is clear enough. Fisher has complete control over who gets selected, and the whole random lottery is just theater to make people accept the executions. The resistance members start discussing timeline and strategy, their voices overlapping as they plan. Someone mentions the next lottery is 3 weeks away, which gives us time to prepare but not much time to actually execute the plan. Audrey cuts through the discussion and explains their goal isn't just to stop one execution, but to expose the entire system publicly, so the community can't ignore the truth anymore. They need to prove the manipulation in a way that's undeniable, that forces everyone to see what's been happening. The plan involves swapping the real lottery box with their replica during the ceremony, forcing a truly random selection that will likely choose a council family member for the first time ever. At the same time, they'll project all their evidence on the square walls, showing everyone the patterns and proof. It's risky and complicated and depends on perfect timing, but it's the only way to expose the council's corruption publicly enough that the community has to respond. I listen to them plan and feel this strange mix of hope and terror, because if this works, it could change everything. But if it fails, we'll all be executed. I ask what happens to me after, whether I can ever go home or see my family again, and Audrey looks at me with this serious expression that doesn't try to soften the truth. She says if we succeed in exposing the council, then maybe eventually I could go back. But if we fail, everyone in this basement will be executed, and our families will probably be punished too. She explains that I'm a traitor now in the council's eyes, that my rescue makes me part of the resistance whether I want to be or not. There's no going back to my old life, no pretending this didn't happen, no way to undo what's been done. The choice isn't whether to fight, but whether to fight effectively or die trying. Her honesty is brutal, but I appreciate it more than false comfort would be, and I nod to show I understand, even though understanding doesn't make it hurt less. A woman about my mother's age comes over and sits down across from me. She introduces herself as Melissa and explains she used to be a council member's daughter before she defected to the resistance. Her voice is quiet but steady as she tells me her cousin was executed 2 years ago for refusing to marry a council member's son. She watched her own family participate in that execution, throwing stones at her cousin while the girl screamed and begged. Melissa says that was the moment she realized her family wasn't just complicit in the system, but actively evil, that they valued power and status over human life. She left that night and found the resistance through people who'd noticed her asking questions at community meetings. She hasn't spoken to her parents since, and she says some days that's the hardest part, knowing her family is still out there throwing stones and celebrating executions while she hides in basements plotting against them. But she also says she sleeps better now than she did when she was part of a council family. because at least now she's fighting for something right, instead of maintaining something evil. The reality of what I've gotten into starts hitting me fully as I sit there listening to Melissa's story. I can never go back to my old life even if I wanted to, can never walk through my community without being hunted, can never sit at dinner with my mother and brother like nothing happened. My family thinks I'm either dead or a traitor, and both options mean I've lost them completely. I'm part of a group trying to overthrow the most powerful people in our community, and if we fail, everyone I care about will suffer for it. The weight of it all crashes down on me at once, and I start crying. Not the quiet tears from before, but full sobbing that makes my ribs scream with pain. Liz comes over and sits with me, not trying to make me feel better or tell me it'll be okay, just letting me grieve for everything I've lost. She hands me a cloth to wipe my face and stays beside me while I cry myself out, and somehow her presence without false comfort helps more than reassurance would. I spend that whole afternoon crying while Liz sits with me, mourning my old life and my family, and the girl I was before my name got called in the square. Third day, Kaylee takes me upstairs to the warehouse level where they set up a training area, and she starts teaching me basic self-defense moves. My ribs hurt with every movement, but she stays patient, showing me how to block and dodge and where to hit someone if they grab me. She explains that being able to protect myself might save my life when things go wrong, and I notice she says when not, if like she already knows the plan will fall apart somewhere. That week, I throw myself into preparation because staying busy keeps me from thinking about my mother holding that stone. Melissa takes me on walks around the community edges at night, teaching me how to move through crowds without being noticed, how to blend in and slip past people without drawing attention. She learned these skills growing up in a council family where she had to sneak around to avoid her parents' constant watching, and now she uses them to spy on the council without getting caught. We spend hours observing guard patrol patterns from hidden spots, and I memorize their routes and timing until I can predict where each guard will be at any moment. The square layout gets mapped in my head through careful study, every entrance and exit, every blind spot and sightline, every place where someone could hide or run. Audrey quizzes me on council member routines until I know which ones eat breakfast at the communal hall and which ones stay home, who walks alone and who always travels with guards, what time they leave their houses and what routes they take. 8 days before the lottery, Audrey calls everyone together in the basement and spreads papers across the table showing detailed plans. She explains we'll swap the real lottery box with our replica during the selection ceremony, and the replica has no weighted papers, so the draw will be truly random for the first time ever. While the swap happens, we'll use stolen projection equipment to display our evidence on the square walls, showing everyone the names and patterns that prove the manipulation. She pulls out the replica box and it looks identical to the real one. Same wood and same size and same fake random mixing mechanism on top. Wyatt demonstrates how the real box has a false bottom with weighted papers that Fisher can feel and avoid. But our replica is just a simple box with every name having equal chance. I point out that if a council member gets selected, they'll just refuse to participate or change the rules immediately. But Wyatt shakes his head and explains that's exactly what we want. He says the community seeing the council break their own sacred rules will destroy the illusion of fairness that keeps everyone obedient and compliant. People have accepted the lottery because they believed it was random and fair, but watching council members refuse their own system will prove it was always rigged. The plan requires 6 people working at the same time, 2 to swap the boxes while everyone's distracted, 2 to operate the projection equipment from hidden positions, and 2 to move through the crowd distributing printed evidence in case the projections fail. Audrey looks at each of us and says this is likely a one-way mission, that we'll probably all be captured or killed, but no one backs out or even hesitates. Melissa just nods and says she's been ready to die for this since she watched her cousin get stoned, and Kaylee squeezes her sister's hand. 5 days before the lottery, I find Audrey alone checking equipment, and I ask why she chose to save me specifically out of all the people who've been selected over the years. She stops what she's doing and admits it was partly strategic, that she'd been watching me for months after my father's execution. She says I'm young enough that the community might feel protective seeing me nearly executed, old enough to explain clearly what's wrong with the system, and connected to enough recent victims that my story carries emotional weight. My father's obvious murder, my brother's trauma, my mother's selection, all of it makes me a powerful symbol of council corruption. I realize then that I'm not just a rescued victim, but a propaganda tool they plan to use, and part of me feels angry about being manipulated even by the people who saved me. But another part understands that symbols matter when you're trying to change people's minds, and if my near execution can wake up the community, then maybe being used is worth it. 3 days before the lottery, Kaylee and I do a practice run of the box swap in the warehouse, timing how long it takes to switch them without anyone noticing. The first try takes us over 2 minutes because my hands shake so bad I almost drop the replica, but Kaylee stays calm and talks me through it. We practice again and again, getting faster each time, until we can complete the swap in 45 seconds flat. But it has to happen while everyone's distracted watching the projections, which means perfect timing between our team and the equipment operators. We run through the sequence over and over, Kaylee counting seconds while I practice grabbing the real box and sliding the replica into place, until my muscles remember the movements even when my brain goes blank from fear. Melissa returns from another reconnaissance mission that afternoon, and her face tells me something's wrong before she even speaks. She says the council moved my mother into a holding cell near the square, claiming they want to make sure she doesn't try to escape before her lottery entry. But really they're keeping her as bait, hoping I'll attempt a rescue that leads them straight to the resistance hideout. My blood goes cold thinking about my mother locked in a cell waiting to die, knowing I'm alive somewhere but can't come for her. That night I break down completely, sobbing that we're going to let my mother die while we play out some complicated plan that probably won't even work. Audrey sits beside me on the floor and doesn't try to stop my crying or tell me it'll be okay. She just waits until I'm quiet enough to hear her. Then she shares that her parents were also held as bait 5 years ago, that the council arrested them and announced their lottery selection early hoping Audrey would try a rescue. She had to choose between saving her parents and protecting the resistance movement that was just starting, and she picked the mission over them. Her voice breaks when she says they died knowing she chose the greater good over their lives, that she watched from hiding while the community stoned her own parents to death. She tells me her parents' last words to her came through a smuggled message the night before their execution, and they wrote that they understood her choice, that they were proud of her, and that some fights matter more than individual lives. I don't know if hearing this makes me feel better or worse, but it helps me understand the weight Audrey carries every single day, the guilt that drives her to risk everything trying to tear down the system that killed them. She says if we succeed and expose the council, maybe eventually the community will see that every death was murder, including her parents and my father and everyone else we've lost, and maybe that knowledge will mean something. 2 days before the lottery, Audrey wakes us before dawn, and we start moving equipment through the tunnels. The passages smell like dirt and rot, and we have to crawl through some sections on our hands and knees, dragging bags of projection gear and the replica box behind us. Kaylee leads because she knows the routes best, her small frame fitting through spaces the rest of us struggle with. Every sound makes me freeze. Certain guards are about to discover us, but we make it to the first stash point near the square's east side. Wyatt sets up the projection equipment in an abandoned building's attic, testing angles and making sure the images will hit the square walls properly. Melissa and I carry the replica box to a maintenance shed behind the platform, hiding it under old tarps that smell like chemicals. The box looks exactly like the real one, same wood grain and metal clasps, and holding it makes my hands shake thinking about what happens if we mess up the swap. We make 3 more trips through the tunnels that day, each one feeling more dangerous than the last. By evening, everything's in position and we're back in the basement, exhausted and filthy. Liz makes us wash up and eat something even though my stomach feels too tight for food. That night, none of us sleep, just sitting around the basement table going over assignments again and again. Kaylee draws the square layout on paper for the 100th time, marking where each person needs to be and when. Wyatt checks his bird call signal, the specific pattern that means start the operation, practicing it until it sounds natural. Melissa reviews the projection sequence, making sure she can trigger it fast when Wyatt signals. I sit with my assignment memorized but keep going over it anyway, because if I stop, my brain fills with images of stones and blood and my mother's crying face. Liz brings bread and cheese around midnight, setting plates in front of everyone. Nobody's hungry, but she stands there until we all eat something, saying we need strength for tomorrow regardless of how it ends. Her voice is calm, but I see her hands shaking when she pours water. Around 3 in the morning, Audrey leaves and comes back with a small wooden box. She opens it, and inside are 6 knives, small but sharp, the kind you could hide easily. She gives one to each of us and makes us promise that if we're captured, we'll use it on ourselves rather than let the council torture information about the others from us. The knife feels cold in my hand, and I slide it into my pocket where it sits heavy against my leg. Part of me is scared of it, but another part feels almost relieved, like having control over at least one choice. Kaylee tucks hers into her boot and tests that she can reach it quickly. Wyatt straps his to his forearm under his sleeve. We all find places to hide them where guards won't find them in a casual search, but we can access them fast if needed. Nobody talks about what it means, that we're all agreeing to die rather than betray each other, but the weight of that promise fills the basement. At dawn, Audrey makes us split up and take different routes to the square. Kaylee and I go first, leaving through separate tunnel exits and walking through different neighborhoods. I'm assigned to the box swap with her, which means getting close to the center of the square where I was nearly executed just 3 weeks ago. My ribs still hurt sometimes from the stones that hit them, and walking toward that place makes my legs feel weak. I force myself to keep moving, staying in crowds and keeping my hood up. The square starts filling early like it always does, 300 people gathering because attendance is mandatory. They all look tired and scared like they do every month, parents holding children's hands too tight, old people moving slowly toward their usual spots. None of them know today will be different. I position myself on the east side where I can see the platform clearly. My mother gets led to the front section where families of the were selected stand, and seeing her makes my chest hurt. She looks thinner than 3 weeks ago, her face hollow and gray. My brother walks past in his guard uniform, his movements stiff and mechanical. I have to grip my hands together to stop myself from running to them, from screaming that I'm alive and we're going to fix this. Mark Fisher steps up to the platform carrying the lottery box, and even from here I can see it's the real one. The wood has a specific scratch pattern on the left side that our replica matches perfectly, but the real box has a slight lean that comes from the false bottom mechanism inside. Fisher sets it on the podium, and I watch his hand rest on top of it, already feeling for the papers beneath. Kaylee appears beside me, her face calm but her fingers tapping against her leg in the nervous pattern she always does. We wait for Wyatt's signal to begin the swap, and my pulse feels too fast, like my body knows something terrible is about to happen. Fisher starts his speech about sacrifice and community survival, the same words I've heard every month for 12 years. He talks about population stability and difficult choices, and how we all share the burden together. My hands curl into fists listening to him lie, watching council families stand in their special section looking bored while everyone else looks terrified. The rage builds in my chest until I can barely breathe. Then Wyatt's signal comes, a bird call from across the square that sounds natural but has a specific rhythm we practiced. Kaylee touches my arm and we start moving toward the platform. At the same moment, Melissa triggers the projection equipment and images suddenly flash across the square walls. Names appear in huge letters, dates beside them, family connections drawn in lines showing the patterns. The crowd gasps and people start murmuring, pointing at the walls and reading the evidence we gathered over 2 years. Fisher stutters in his speech, his head turning to look at the projections, confused about what's happening. In that moment of distraction, Kaylee and I reach the platform. We practiced this sequence so many times my hands move automatically even though they're shaking. I grab the real box while Kaylee slides the replica into place and we swap them in 40 seconds flat. Her hands stay steady while mine tremble, but we get it done and start backing away. Then a guard spots us and yells, his voice cutting through the crowd noise. Fisher looks down at the box and then at us, his face going from confused to enraged as he realizes what we've done. His mouth opens to shout orders, but the crowd is pressing forward to see the projections better, creating chaos that blocks the guard's path. People are shouting questions about the evidence, about the names on the walls, about why council families never get selected. Fisher screams for order, but his voice gets lost in the noise. More guards try to push through, but 300 people are all moving at once, some trying to get closer to the walls, some trying to get away from the platform, everyone talking and pointing and demanding answers. Fisher grabs for the box with shaking hands, and his fingers close around a paper slip, pulling it out automatically like he's done 100 times before. He unfolds it, and his mouth opens to read the name, but then his face goes completely white, all the blood draining out until he looks like he might pass out. The square gets quiet fast, everyone stopping mid-sentence to watch him, and he stares at the paper like it says something impossible. His hand drops to his side, and he looks toward the council section where the 5 families stand separated from everyone else. Courtney Napier stands there in her expensive dress looking confused about why Fisher stopped talking, and her husband leans over asking what's wrong. Fisher's mouth moves, but no sound comes out at first. Then he whispers the name so quiet most people can't hear it. Someone near the platform yells for him to speak up, and Fisher clears his throat and reads louder. The name echoes across the square just like mine did 3 weeks ago, just like hundreds of names before. But this time it's different because he says Courtney Napier and the square goes completely silent in a way I've never heard before. Courtney's face goes from confused to shocked to terrified in about 2 seconds, her hand flying to her mouth. Her husband starts yelling immediately, his voice cutting through the silence, saying this is obviously sabotage, and they need to do the selection over with proper procedures. He's pointing at the projections still showing on the walls, at me and Kaylee backing away from the platform, at the smoke still hanging in the air. But people in the crowd start shouting back before he can finish, their voices getting louder and angrier. Someone yells about why council families get a do-over when no one else ever has, when my neighbor's daughter watched her mother die without any second chances. Another person points at the evidence on the walls showing 12 years of manipulated selections, asking why they should believe anything is an accident now. More voices join in, the crowd pressing forward and getting louder, and I can see the moment when years of fear start turning into rage. Fisher tries to restore order by screaming for the guards to arrest everyone involved in the sabotage, his voice cracking with panic. He's pointing at me and Kaylee, at the projection equipment, at anyone standing near the platform, but half the guards aren't moving. They're just standing there staring at the walls where the evidence keeps scrolling, showing names and dates and patterns. I see my brother in his guard uniform about 20 feet away, completely frozen with his weapon hanging loose in his hand. He's staring at one specific section of the projection that shows our father's name, the date 3 months ago, the notation that says targeted for questioning council land policies. His face looks like something broke inside him, like he's seeing proof of what he maybe always suspected but couldn't let himself believe. A guard near him asks if they should move toward the platform, but my brother doesn't respond, doesn't even seem to hear him. Then Audrey steps forward from the crowd and her voice cuts through all the noise, clear and strong. She announces that she's part of the resistance movement that's been operating for 2 years, that they have more evidence of council corruption stored in safe locations, that the community needs to decide right now whether to keep accepting the system or fight back. Guards start moving toward her immediately, but townspeople step between them, forming a human wall that blocks their path. An older woman I recognize from the market stands in front of Audrey with her arms spread wide, and two men move beside her, and suddenly there's a line of people protecting her. The guards stop, looking confused about what to do when the people they're supposed to protect are the ones blocking them. I find my voice somewhere in my chest and step forward too, pulling off the hood that's been hiding my face. People near me gasp and step back, recognizing me, and the gasps spread through the crowd like ripples in water. I tell them I was selected 3 weeks ago, that my mother threw the first stone like the rules required, that I should be dead right now except the resistance saved me, because they believed the truth mattered more than one life. My voice shakes, but I keep talking, describing how the smoke bombs went off and hands grabbed me and carried me away while everyone thought I was dying. I explain about the evidence wall in the resistance hideout, about learning how Fisher manipulates the lottery box, about watching my own father get executed for questioning the council. The crowd gets quieter as I talk, people staring at me like I'm a ghost, and I see my mother in the front row where family members stand. Her stone is still in her hand from when she was supposed to throw it at me, and when she sees my face, her legs give out completely. She falls straight down like her bones dissolved, and my brother breaks from his frozen position to catch her before she hits the ground. It's the first voluntary movement I've seen him make in months, the first time he's reacted to anything around him since his girlfriend died. He's holding Mom up while she sobs into his chest, and people around them are crying too, and I can see the exact moment when the crowd's fear transforms into anger at the council. Parents are holding their children tighter and looking at Fisher with hatred instead of respect, and the guards who were moving toward Audrey have stopped completely. Fisher makes one last attempt to regain control by ordering the guards to arrest me and Audrey and anyone who interferes, his voice high and desperate. He's screaming about maintaining order and following procedures and respecting authority, but it sounds hollow now with the evidence still projecting behind him. One of the guards near the platform, an older man with gray hair who I remember lost his son to the lottery years ago, looks at Fisher for a long moment. Then he drops his weapon on the ground and walks away from the platform, heading toward the crowd instead. The sound of his weapon hitting stone echoes across the square, and for a second nobody moves. Then another guard drops her weapon and follows him, and another, and another. Some guards just stand still, refusing to follow orders, their faces showing the same confusion and anger as the townspeople. Within minutes, Fisher is left on the platform with only 2 loyal guards while facing 300 angry people who've spent 12 years living in fear. Courtney's husband tries to run, pushing through the council section toward the edge of the square, but the crowd blocks all the exits. People form walls with their bodies, not letting any council member leave, and his face goes from angry to scared as he realizes he's trapped. The confrontation stretches on for hours after that, the sun moving across the sky while council members try to justify the system, and resistance members present more evidence, and townspeople share stories of loved ones they now realize were deliberately targeted. Melissa comes forward with documents she stole from her father's office showing property transfers that happened right after executions, proving the council took land from families who lost members. Wyatt explains the lottery box mechanism in detail, showing everyone exactly how Fisher could feel which papers to avoid. Person after person stands up to tell their story, about mothers and fathers and children and friends who died because they questioned the council, or owned something valuable, or just existed as a threat to the 5 families' power. My mother reaches me through the crowd eventually, pushing past people until she can grab me and hold me while crying so hard her whole body shakes. She keeps touching my face and my arms like she can't believe I'm real, and she's saying she's sorry over and over until I tell her to stop, that she didn't have a choice, that I understand. My brother stands with us looking at Audrey like he's seeing hope for the first time since his girlfriend died, and I watch him mouth words silently like he's trying to remember how to speak. The sun starts setting and the crowd is still there, still talking and arguing and sharing stories, and the council members look smaller now, less powerful. Fisher keeps trying to speak, but people shout him down, and eventually he just stands there defeated, while guards who stayed loyal look uncertain about what to do. By the time the sky turns orange and purple, the community has stripped the council of power through nothing but refusing to accept their authority anymore. The guards who defected take the 5 council members and lock them in the same holding cells where they used to keep lottery victims before executions, and nobody objects. Audrey stands on the platform where Fisher stood hours ago and warns everyone that building a new system will be harder than tearing down the old one, that we'll have disagreements and setbacks and people who want the old ways back. She says the real work starts now, figuring out how to govern ourselves without fear and manipulation, and her voice is tired but determined. The crowd listens quietly, and I can see people nodding, understanding that today was just the beginning of something much bigger and harder than one confrontation in the square. That night, the resistance members gathered in the old warehouse basement with about 20 people from the community who wanted to help build something new. Audrey stood at the front explaining we needed rules that everyone agreed on, not rules forced on us by 5 families who never faced the same risks. People kept interrupting with questions about how to make decisions, and who would be in charge, and whether we could trust anyone with power after what the council did. Melissa raised her hand and suggested her father might know useful things about community resources and how everything worked. Even though he was a council member, if we could get him to help under new leadership. Some people shouted that no council member deserved any role in the new system, but Audrey said we needed their knowledge even if we couldn't trust their judgment. The meeting went past midnight with everyone arguing and planning and trying to figure out how to govern ourselves without killing people, and by the end we had more questions than answers, but at least we were asking them together. After the meeting ended, I walked through the dark streets to find my mother and brother at our old house, and Mom grabbed me the second I came through the door. She kept touching my face and my arms like she expected me to disappear, and she was crying so hard she could barely breathe. She told me throwing that stone at me was the worst thing she ever did, that she wanted to refuse but was so afraid they would select my brother next if she didn't follow the rules. I held her while she cried and told her I understood, that the system was designed to make us hurt each other, that it wasn't her fault. My brother sat at the table watching us with tears running down his face, and after a while he pulled out paper and started writing. He wrote that he wanted to help the resistance however he could, that watching the system fall apart in the square was the first time he felt anything since his girlfriend died. Liz came by the next morning and read what he wrote, and she suggested he might benefit from working with her on healing practices, using actions to process his pain, since words didn't come easily for him. My brother nodded and wrote that he would try anything if it meant feeling less broken inside. Over the next 2 weeks, the community held meetings almost every night to work on new rules and structures, and people argued constantly about what to do with the council members. Some wanted to execute them immediately as revenge for all the people they killed, and others wanted them locked up forever, and a few even suggested forgiving them and letting them stay if they gave up power. Audrey stood up during one heated meeting and said executing them would just make us the same kind of killers they were, that we had to find justice without continuing the cycle of violence. People shouted at her that the council members deserved to die, that their families deserved to suffer like ours did, but Audrey kept arguing that revenge wouldn't bring back the dead or heal our community. The debates went on for days with no agreement, and I could see people getting tired and angry and scared that maybe we couldn't actually build something better. Finally, we settled on permanent exile, sending the 5 council members into the wilderness with basic supplies but no way to return or contact the community. It wasn't perfect justice and some people stayed angry about it, but it removed them from power without turning us into murderers. The day we destroyed the lottery box felt like the most important ceremony we ever had. Audrey organized it in the square where so many people had died, and she was invited everyone who lost family members to take turns smashing the box with hammers. Hundreds of people showed up, some crying and some angry, and some just standing there looking lost. My mother took her turn first from our family, and she cried while she swung the hammer down, the wood splintering under the force. My brother went next with his face set in grim lines, and he hit the box over and over until someone had to pull him back. When my turn came, I felt both satisfaction and emptiness, because destroying the box didn't bring back my father or my brother's girlfriend or any of the hundreds of people who died. We left the broken pieces in the square for 3 days so everyone could see them, and then we burned them and scattered the ashes. A month after the confrontation, we held the first actual democratic community meeting to discuss population management, and the conversation was messy and complicated, but at least it was honest. People proposed voluntary moves to start new settlements in the cleared wilderness areas, and others suggested building more housing in parts of the community we hadn't used before. Someone brought up farming techniques that could produce more food with the same land, and another person talked about families choosing to have fewer children. The meeting lasted 6 hours, and people disagreed about almost everything, but nobody suggested killing people randomly to solve the problem. That felt like progress even though we didn't have any final answers. Mom started getting better slowly after joining a support group Liz organized for family members who were forced to throw stones at their loved ones. She still had nightmares and moments where she couldn't look at her own hands without seeing blood, but hearing other people's stories helped her feel less alone in her guilt. She told me one night that she thought she would carry the weight of throwing that stone at me for the rest of her life, but at least now she was learning how to carry it without breaking completely. My brother began working with Liz on healing practices, helping her prepare medicines and assist with treating people's injuries, and gradually he started making sounds again. They were small vocalizations at first, just noises when he was focused on his work, but Liz encouraged him to keep trying. He wrote on paper that he didn't know if he would ever fully speak again, but he was learning other ways to communicate and help people, and that felt like enough for now. 3 months after the system fell, I was helping Audrey train new community defense volunteers in the warehouse where the resistance used to hide. We were teaching them the difference between protecting people and enforcing unjust rules, showing them how to use force only when absolutely necessary to keep others safe. Kaylee worked beside me demonstrating defensive moves, and sometimes during breaks, we talked about the people we were before the lottery controlled our lives. We tried to imagine who we might become now that we didn't wake up every month terrified of hearing our names called, now that we could actually plan for a future beyond the next lottery day. Over the following months, the community held weekly meetings where people argued about food distribution and building materials, and what to do when someone broke the new rules we were trying to establish. Some older residents kept saying the lottery system worked fine, and we were making everything harder by trying to change it. which made me so angry I had to leave the room during those discussions before I said something I'd regret. Audrey helped me understand that fear makes people cling to familiar systems, even when those systems hurt them, and the best we could do was keep showing them a better way existed. 3 families decided they couldn't stay in the place where they'd thrown stones at their neighbors, and we helped them pack supplies and draw maps to cleared areas in the wilderness where they could start fresh settlements. Watching them leave felt sad but also right, like maybe healing looked different for everyone, and forcing people to stay wouldn't help anyone recover. My nightmares never stopped coming, and some nights I woke up screaming with my sheets soaked in sweat, seeing my mother's face as she raised that first stone. Liz told me during one of our talks that trauma changes your brain permanently, and I'd probably carry these nightmares for the rest of my life. But that didn't mean I couldn't also have good days mixed in with the bad ones. She was right, because some mornings I'd wake up and see my brother working in the community garden we'd planted where the execution square used to be, his hands in the dirt, and his mouth forming words he was slowly learning to speak again, and I'd feel something like hope growing in my chest. Mom laughed with her support group sometimes now, real laughter that sounded almost like the person she was before fear ate her from the inside. And watching her heal even a little bit made me think maybe we'd actually survive this and build something better from all the broken pieces.